2025, Osaka, Japan. Tonight, Shunki dreamed of his parents again. They were sitting on a bus heading to heaven, smiling and reminding him, who had just started elementary school, no matter what, you must take good care of your sister Fumiko. However, in the blink of an eye, his sister had taken a seat on the back of a stranger's bicycle, and the two waved goodbye to Shunki with smiles. In an instant, he found himself alone, having lost both his parents and his sister. Shunki woke up from the dream. By now, it was already bright outside, and it was time for his sister to go to work. After paying respects to his parents' spirits, he stood by the window, watching his sister ride her bicycle, disappearing at the end of the path. Now, Shunki works as a welder in a factory. Compared to the older craftsmen in the factory, his 35 years are not considered old, yet his welding skills are the best in the factory, simply because Shunki dropped out of high school and dedicated himself to this trade, gaining several years of experience over those who changed careers midway. All his hard work is driven by the heavy responsibility on his shoulders. When his sister Fumiko was born, their father died in a car accident. With the family losing its pillar, their mother worked up to 4 part-time jobs to support the 2 siblings. By the time Shunki entered high school, their mother could no longer hold on and passed away from exhaustion. What was once a complete family was left with only Shunki and Fumiko relying on each other. Having lost their source of income, and with his sister still young, Shunki resolutely dropped out of high school, started as an apprentice in a factory, and gradually supported the family, allowing his sister to finish high school and university until she is now about to enter the halls of marriage. The hardships of these 20-plus years are self-evident. Shunki has devoted almost all of his most precious youth to this noisy and stuffy factory. He has no complaints, as he has always held on to the promise made with his parents. As an older brother, he must protect his sister well. However, as he sees the heavy burden about to be lifted, Shunki finds it hard to feel much joy. He has grown accustomed to waking up every day to the aroma of breakfast prepared by his sister, accustomed to seeing her off to work before heading to the factory himself. After their parents' departure, his sister became his only family. Now that his sister is going to marry Taro and move out to start her own family, Shunki can't help but feel a bit lost and somewhat melancholic. Because of this, whenever he sees his sister's fiancé Taro, he always finds it hard to hide his displeasure. But Taro is indeed the person chosen by his sister, and the wedding is set for the end of this month. Tonight, his sister is going out for a bachelorette trip with friends, so Shunki has a simple meal at an izakaya. He and the owner Kamako reflect on how quickly time passes. He did not know that his sister Fumiko, who was supposed to be out with friends, was at a household in Kyoto, calling an older man father, while the name he called her was not Fumiko, but Kiyomi. As the wedding date approached, Shunki was discussing the details of the wedding day with Fumiko and Taro at an izakaya. But he was absent-minded the whole time, even getting up and walking outside the shop. This made Taro a bit worried, unsure if Shunki was still having difficulty accepting himself. Fumiko said her brother was just putting on an act. The shop owner Kamako also advised Taro not to worry too much. After all, this was a place Shunki's father often visited when he was alive. Since Shunki was willing to bring him here, it meant he regarded him as family. The night breeze outside calmed Shunki's mind a bit, and he couldn't help but recall the evening many years ago when Fumiko was born. At that time, his father was leaning against the delivery room, looking at his sister in the swaddling blanket, his eyes filled with uncontainable joy and excitement. Then, he took Shunki to stand downstairs at the hospital, shouting "Long live," to celebrate the birth of his daughter. Fumiko was a child born out of love and expectation. His father often said that his greatest wish was to see her start a family with his own eyes. Now that this wish was about to come true, as her older brother, he should feel genuinely happy. Thinking of this, Shunki also shouted "Long live," with a hint of relief in his voice. Fulfilling his parents' wishes and making his sister happy was enough. Kamako inside the shop heard the commotion outside and couldn't help but mutter quietly, puzzled about what Shunki was doing. Fumiko, however, laughed. Although she had never met her father, through Shunki's stories over the years, she knew that her brother was celebrating with Dad for her. However, facing the partner she would spend her life with, Fumiko thought long and hard and decided to confess a secret about herself to Taro. She was prepared to be rejected, but unexpectedly, after hearing her, Taro tightly held her hand and promised to cherish her even more in the future. Fumiko finally felt a sense of relief, and the subsequent wedding preparations proceeded more smoothly as a result. Just as everything was progressing step by step, one day Fumiko woke up, looked at a photo of herself with 3 others on her phone, and fell into a panic. In the photo, the older man was her father Jean, and the slightly aging woman was her sister Fusey. But what about the brother? What was the name of the brother standing behind her sister? No matter what, Fumiko couldn't remember. Worse still, she found that she had a vague memory of the family's address, only recalling it was in some countryside in Kyoto. Fumiko rushed to Kyoto, inquiring everywhere, and after spending quite some time, finally found the correct address. Now that Fumiko's wedding date is approaching, the Jean family is all happy for her. That evening, the whole family gathered together, took out the photo album, and flipped through the pages, looking at Fumiko's photos from childhood to adulthood, sharing stories from her school days. The air was filled with a joyful and warm atmosphere. However, while this side was filled with family reunion happiness, Shunki was extremely anxious. He went to find his brother-in-law Taro to drink and chat, only to find that it was already late and his sister had not yet returned home. Knowing Fumiko's secret, Taro naturally understood that she had gone to the Shigeta family in Kyoto. But since Fumiko had previously instructed him not to disclose this, he had to make an excuse to go out and hurriedly find a chance to call Fumiko to inform her of the news. After unifying their statements, Taro returned home and lied to Shunki, saying that Fumiko was busy with her studies and would be staying at school tonight. But just at the moment Taro went out, Shunki's phone popped up a news alert. A woman was attacked in a random murder incident while returning home at night. It was the same gender and the same kind of random attack. Remembering that his sister had been coming home late frequently lately, Shunki suddenly recalled a news article from years ago about a young woman named Kiyomi who was murdered while serving as a bus tour guide. Thinking about what had happened to his sister later, Shunki's heart sank, and he hurried home. In the end, he found a notebook among his sister's luggage that had not yet been moved. When he opened it, it was filled with one name, Shigeta Kiyomi. Immediately after, he discovered a large stack of letters in an old iron box, all sent by Jean. At this point, Shunki confirmed that after that incident years ago, his sister had not kept her promise and had severed contact with the Shigeta family. He immediately drove to the location from his memories, but was stopped by Taro before he could go far. Taro insisted on going with him to find her. Shunki hesitated for a long time before finally deciding to tell the truth. He asked Taro, "Can a person possess another person's memories?" During the spring break before Shunki's 5th grade, one night, he found his sister suddenly sitting up, giving him a strange smile, and then she started vomiting uncontrollably and fell into a coma. After being taken to the hospital, the doctor diagnosed it as just a common cold. But from that day on, Fumiko completely changed. She stopped eating her favorite snacks, no longer played with her beloved dolls, as if she had matured a lot overnight. She no longer watched cartoons when she came home, but instead sat alone, continuously writing something in her notebook. Shunki wanted to lean in to see, but she glared at him, not allowing him to come closer. Until one afternoon, Shunki, distracted by play, did not keep an eye on his sister, and when he returned home, he discovered with his mother's exclamation that his sister had not come back. His mother hurried out to search for her, and Shunki took the opportunity to open the notebook that his sister had been writing in. It turned out that the page was filled with many names he didn't recognize: Kiyomi, Jean, Fusey, Koichi. Just as he was filled with confusion, the police called. It turned out that his sister had taken the train to Kyoto without a ticket and got lost on the way back due to her unfamiliarity with the subway lines. But why did Fumiko want to go to Kyoto? And why did she write those names in the notebook? Faced with Shunki's questions, Fumiko hesitated for a long time before revealing a shocking piece of news. Ever since that inexplicable cold, there has been an additional soul in her body, the soul of Kiyomi. She not only possessed Kiyomi's memories, but also seemed to have Kiyomi's home. Fumiko often dreamed of living in a family of 5, with a father, mother, older sister, and older brother. She also dreamed of becoming a bus tour guide when she grew up, but was stabbed to death while trying to protect passengers during one of her jobs. In the recurring dreams, Fumiko gradually blurred the boundaries between herself and Kiyomi, slowly identifying herself as Kiyomi. Her trip to Kyoto was precisely because Kiyomi's home was there. She wanted to see the family from her memories with her own eyes. However, for Shunki, reincarnation and soul crossing were simply too absurd to comprehend. In his heart, Fumiko was Fumiko, his only sister, the only daughter of the Kato family. Yet, after confessing, Fumiko always insisted that Shunki take her to Kyoto one more time. Reluctantly, Shunki lied to their mother, took his sister's hand, and boarded the train to Kiyomi's home. But he also made a pact with his sister that this would be the only time, just a distant glance, and they could never have any ties with the Shigeta family again. Otherwise, what would happen to Mom? What would happen to him? Along the way, Shunki chattered about how happy and fond their father was when Fumiko was born. But Fumiko's reaction was quite flat because she had no impression of her father since she could remember. Instead, after acquiring Kiyomi's memories, Jean felt more like the true father in her heart. Upon arriving at their destination, even though this was Kyoto, a place Fumiko had never set foot in, she was familiar with every street and every shop. Guided by her memories, the siblings drew closer to the Shigeta family. At that moment, an elderly man passing by caught Fumiko's attention, and she immediately recognized him as Jean. But why did her once tall and strong father now appear so thin and haggard? Fumiko wanted to approach him for recognition, but she had made a promise with her brother, so in the end, only Shunki could ask the nearby neighbors for information. They learned that it had been exactly 7 years since Kiyomi was murdered. During this time, her mother also passed away due to illness, leaving only her father, sister, and brother at home. On the day Kiyomi had her accident, Jean was peacefully eating udon noodles at home. After the bad news arrived, he couldn't forgive himself. While his daughter was leaving, he was still eating calmly. From then on, Jean could no longer eat any food, surviving daily on just a little milk and some vegetables, and his body gradually deteriorated. Fumiko, who learned of the situation, was anxious and wanted to rush to Jean to advise him to take care of himself, but her brother wouldn't allow her to contact the Shigeta family. After thinking it over, Fumiko finally came up with a plan. She went to the azalea garden and placed various flowers into a bento box, then asked her brother to deliver this flower bento to her father Jean. So, when Kiyomi's sister Fusey was about to take their father out, Shunki came over with the bento. He lied and said it was from a lady who asked him to deliver it. When Jean opened the box and saw it filled with fresh flowers, he felt his long silent heart start to beat again. The white azaleas represented rice, the red azaleas represented pickled plums, and the rapeseed flowers were for the omelet. This was Kiyomi's favorite game when she was young. In the past, she would always run to the nearby azalea garden, arrange the flowers into the lunchbox one by one, and then bounce back to present it to him, saying it was a flower bento made for Dad. Of course, the flowers couldn't be eaten, but the memories hidden among them, the bond and connection between father and daughter, transcended life and death at that moment, returning to Jin's heart and making him suddenly feel hungry. Fusey believed this was her sister Kiyomi encouraging their father to eat well. But Kiyomi had been gone for 7 years. Who could it be that asked Shunki to deliver the bento? Fusey took a photo of her sister and found Shunki, who was about to leave the station. When Fusey took out Kiyomi's photo, Shunki blocked his sister behind him, preventing any eye contact. In the chaos, Jean recognized at a glance the soul of his daughter hidden in Fumiko's small body, and he softly called out, "Kiyomi." Shunki quickly urged the two to step back. "She is not Kiyomi. She is Fumiko. Don't think about taking Fumiko away from him." Fumiko remained silent throughout, hiding behind her brother, quietly gazing at the father who frequently appeared in her dreams through Kiyomi's memories. The contact with the Shigeta family should have ended after that trip to Kyoto in her childhood. Unexpectedly, her sister had deceived her. All these years, she had been maintaining correspondence with Jean. When Taro saw that Shunki had said this much, he no longer hid the truth, honestly admitting that he had known about this matter for a long time, and that Fumiko had actually stayed at the Shigeta house last night. He was just covering for her. Shunki showed helplessness, but finding his sister was the top priority, so he did not pursue the matter further. Following his memories to the Shigeta family, Shunki was filled with a surge of anger. They had clearly agreed not to meet again, so why had the Shigeta family still kept in touch with Fumiko all these years? After their mother passed away, Fumiko was his only relative, the most precious treasure of his life. Could it be that just because of a soul crossing, they treated Fumiko as Kiyomi? As soon as Jean saw Shunki, he knew he was there to seek justice and quickly bowed in apology, his already hunched back bending even lower. His humble appearance, filled with guilt, made the reprimand that was on the tip of Shunki's tongue ultimately turn into a sigh. He had also lost a close relative and understood how torturous that feeling was. Fumiko was the hope reignited for them 7 years after losing their daughter. Even just knowing her news from afar was a thought that supported them to keep living. It was only natural to want to reach out. Although Fumiko bore no resemblance to Kiyomi, the situation of one body, two souls had long led the Shigeta family to regard her as family. In the face of Shunki's dissatisfaction, they did not argue, only expressing repeated apologies and gratitude. "Thank you, Shunki, for raising Fumiko to adulthood." It was because of Fumiko's presence that their father reignited hope for life. While speaking, Sister Fusey took out an album filled with photos that Fumiko had sent back over the years. This was her elementary school graduation ceremony, and this one was of Shunki and his siblings dressed as monsters for an event. Although they were not family, it felt as if they were watching their own child grow up. It was the Kato family that gave the Shigeta family the courage to live again. It was also the hardships that the Kato family had endured that told the Shigeta family that hope was always present. The Shigeta family always believed that meeting Fumiko was a stroke of luck, so they never dared to ask for more. Now that they learned Fumiko was about to get married and enter a new stage of life, they even took the initiative to propose cutting off contact to avoid disturbing her new life. However, yesterday was Kiyomi's death anniversary, and Fumiko was worried everyone would be sad, which was why she had come to accompany them. Looking at the Shigeta family in front of him, Shunki's previously relieved heart was once again seized by panic. Fumiko and Kiyomi were clearly two completely different people. Did they really want to take away his only sister with such reluctance? After leaving a warning, Shunki turned and left the room. Just then, Fumiko's phone call came in. Shunki rushed to the Azalea Garden as per the address and finally saw his sister, who had disappeared for an entire night. He did not understand what his sister was doing. The wedding was tomorrow. Why was she not at home preparing, but instead with this group of irrelevant people? Fumiko looked at her brother, hesitated for a long time, and finally spoke out the plan she had been brewing in her heart. When Kiyomi had her accident, there were only 2 days left until her wedding. Jean had already prepared the wedding dress and was eagerly looking forward to witnessing his daughter step into a new phase of life with her loved one. Who would have thought such a cruel thing would happen? To fulfill Jin's wish, Fumiko hoped to invite the Shigeta family to tomorrow's wedding. Shunki was furious upon hearing this. Fumiko, wake up. Fumiko is Kato-S Fumiko, not Shigeta Kiyomi. Fumiko's father has always been the one from the Kato family. Shunki will never allow Fumiko to invite them to the wedding. Fumiko felt that her brother carried many memories shared with their father. They had climbed Mount Fuji together, enjoyed the deliciousness of okonomiyaki, and had shouted, "Long live," side by side. The bond between her brother and father was the closest father-son relationship. Yet all of this was something she had never possessed. Her father left too early. She hadn't even begun to remember things at that time. To Fumiko, her father was merely an old photograph, the protagonist in the distant stories her brother told. They had never spent even a single moment together in reality. However, in Fumiko's heart, Jean was different. She grew up carrying Kiyomi's memories, and it was these memories that made her understand what a father was and what it meant to be cherished by a father's love. Over the years, in their correspondence, Jean always inquired about her well-being and work-life balance. That genuine and warm concern was something she could always feel clearly. However, her brother could rest assured that when she extended the invitation to Jean yesterday, Jean had politely declined. Jean said that her good intentions were enough, and it was she who insisted. Since the wedding date was set, she gradually sensed that Kiyomi's presence within her was quietly fading, and the memories related to the Shigeta family were becoming increasingly thin. Now, she could no longer remember Koichi's name, and even his family's address was gradually blurring in her memory, which frightened her. She was afraid that after getting married, she would completely forget everything related to Kiyomi. She really wanted to let Jean and the others see her getting married while her memories were still intact, as if to fulfill Kiyomi's unfinished wish from years ago. Fumiko had said so much, almost laying her heart bare before her brother, just hoping he could understand her a little more. However, Shunki still refused to relent, and Fumiko ultimately had to compromise sadly. Although Shunki got the answer he wanted, strangely, he couldn't feel any joy. Instead, his heart felt heavy and suffocated. Once he got home, he turned around and went to his usual izakaya, drinking one cup after another in silence. Shunki constantly recalled the letter from Jean he had opened during the day, filled with blessings for his sister, and the comfort and happiness of being a parent, finally witnessing his children start their own families. But he really couldn't understand. With their father passing away early and their mother following shortly after, it was he who had dropped out of high school to work in a factory, enduring various hardships to raise his sister to adulthood. Suddenly appearing, the Shigeta family had no reason to make his sister care for them so much. In a drunken haze, Shunki dreamed of his parents. He saw them driving that old truck appearing before him. His father, wearing his old work uniform, walked over with a smile, gently patting him on the shoulder, his voice still as loud as in his memories. "Shunki, well done. You truly lived up to their expectations." Before Shunki could speak, a bus drove up from a distance. Getting off the bus was Shigeta Kiyomi. It turned out that the day Fumiko was born was also the day Kiyomi passed away and went to heaven. The heavenly guide, in a moment of oversight, transferred her soul into Fumiko's body. At this point, his father's gaze softened, hiding a hint of regret for not being able to witness his daughter grow up, yet wrapped in the relief that Fumiko had finally found happiness. How he wished to see Fumiko in her wedding dress, walking her down the aisle and entrusting her to a trustworthy person. Unfortunately, there would be no more opportunities. And Jean must have thought the same. As a parent, one always wants to accompany their child through one important moment after another. However, tomorrow is Fumiko's wedding, and the elders' wishes will finally be fulfilled. It is also time for Kiyomi to leave. At this point, everyone's obsessions should be put down, and they should be able to go to heaven without worries, with peace in their hearts. Shunki should also take care of himself. Fumiko still needs someone to look after her, but there is no need to limit her journey to just being by her side. She has grown up and has her own path to take and journeys to embark on. Then, Shunki watched as his father showed a bright smile, and with his mother, they got into the truck with Kiyomi and started the engine. The truck transformed into a shooting star, streaking across the dark night sky, eventually disappearing from sight. After waking up, Shunki felt an infinite melancholy. His father's words had untangled the knots in his heart that had been there for a long time. It turned out that Kiyomi did not want to replace his sister. Their coexistence was merely an accident, and Fumiko's insistence on inviting the Shigeta family was not a betrayal. She just wanted to make up for the regret of a father who could not witness his daughter's wedding and a daughter who could not have her father accompany her down the aisle. Shunki thought it was time to let Fumiko step into this new stage of life with two father's love, and he had been worrying about what wedding gift to give his sister. Until this moment, he finally had a clear answer in his heart. It was not yet dawn when he hurriedly drove to Kyoto. He was going to personally pick up the Shigeta family and invite them to Fumiko's wedding. Before setting off, Shunki specifically called his sister to say he might arrive at the venue a little later. He wanted to remind her a few more things, but the phone automatically shut down due to low battery. What Shunki didn't expect was that there were frequent accidents on the way to pick up the Shigeta family. First, he mistakenly entered the wrong hotel. Then he got stuck in traffic, causing significant delays, and ultimately missed the scheduled time. As the wedding was about to start at 11 o'clock, the person in charge of the venue kept urging, and Fumiko had no choice but to gently lift the hem of her wedding dress, preparing to walk into the wedding hall accompanied by her fiancé, Teruo's father. Just as the door to happiness was about to open, a sudden commotion came from behind Fumiko. Shunki had finally arrived at the venue with the Shigeta family. Thus, the originally prepared schedule was adjusted on the spot. Fumiko ultimately walked into the hall accompanied by Jean. The wedding was successfully completed. As the event concluded, Fumiko stood at the exit to bid farewell to the guests. When it was the turn of the Shigeta family, she smiled and handed them the return gift, and then a sentence slipped out that left all those in the know stunned. Fumiko asked Jean. They seemed to have never met. Where did you all come from? Shunki had not anticipated that his sister had forgotten the Shigeta family, forgotten all memories related to Kiyomi, but he felt incredibly fortunate. Thankfully, he had brought Jean and the others to witness Fumiko's wedding, fulfilling a long-delayed wish for both Kiyomi and his sister. On the other side, the Shigeta family boarded the train back to Kyoto. When they opened the return gift, tears instantly filled their eyes. It was still the pure white azalea as the base for rice, the bright red azalea stacked as pickled plum, and the tender yellow flowers adorned as omelet. This was a box of the flower bento that their daughter loved the most back then.